one stage left in the 2009 Tour de France, and it might have been the most experimental route for a couple of decades, but the race organisers know better than to mess with the last day. Helicopter shot of the Eiffel Tower, peloton roaring up the Rue de Rivoli, tricolore flying over the Place de la Concorde, and then off for 7 storming laps of the Champs-Élysées. So it's spectacular, ceremonial business as usual, and who'd want it any other way? Now let's take a look at the last 164 of the riders' 3,460 kilometre 3-week journey. And it's the usual final Sunday procedure: pick a town a suitable distance from the capital. This year it's Montereau-Follon. And deliver the riders safely to the Champs-Élysées with as little incident along the way as possible. The real race, the last third of it, will be on the famous cobbles. 52 kilometres or so of furious kamikaze attacks and desperate breakaways for what everybody expects will be the last bunch sprint of this year's race. Before that, of course, there's all the traditional last day of school stuff, or perhaps not this year given the atmosphere within the Astana team. Alberto Contador did attack on his own as soon as the flag was dropped. Then the motorbike man helpfully chalked up his second win for him on the Time Gaps blackboard. But there was a distinct lack of happy support of teammates around him. Lance Armstrong was back in the pack on his exclusive Damien Hirst customised butterfly bike. Apparently the pickled shark model didn't conform to UCI regulations. Fabian Cancellara was one of several riders who'd brought their own cameras, shooting the television cameras, shooting them, and so on into infinity. And here's something I don't think we've seen all tour: Mark Cavendish and Bradley Wiggins in the same shot. But Brad was managing to get a smile out of Cav, probably telling him how he intends to lead Tyler Farrar out in the sprint and nick the stage win for Garmin. Now, eventually champagne was served up from the Astana team car, but if Alberto and Lance toasted each other, it certainly wasn't in front of the cameras. A couple of sips later, the disposable glasses were disposed of, and it was back to the race.
One lap to go to the end of the Tour de France. They go through, these 3 riders, with a 9 seconds advantage. Only 3 survivors of 7. It is Beppu, Fumiyuki Beppu, Fabian Weckmann, Jussi Väikkönen, and the Tour de France is after them. These 3 boys, for the thick end of 7 laps of the Champs-Élysées, have given it their all now. Is the firepower still there from Columbia HTC? This is interesting because Garmin Slipstream had tried for 3 weeks how to outwit Mark Cavendish. Everything they've tried has failed. Now they're trying to do something different.
This is a move now from Cees d'Epargne. They're thinking about their sprinter, of course, Phil, and that is the Mano Rojas, who has been very rapid.
Counter-attacks, in fact, from Garmin Slipstream as they try to reposition and swept the leaders away. So, with half a lap left of the Tour de France on the streets of the centre of Paris, the scene is now set for victory number 6 for Mark Cavendish.
Well, it looks as if Kim Kirkland has slipped away from the front end of the pack there, Phil. He did a violent turn as it's Bernard Eisel who leads them round. Franco Pellizotti in the King of the Mountains jersey has moved himself up into 3rd place. He's getting involved, quite possibly in a lead-up for his man, Daniele Bernati.
Well, it's a line astern and a queue up at the top in the shadow of the arc, but now they're going down. Now they're at full stretch as they go down here at 80 kilometres an hour.
This man is just waiting to get to the finishing line because this is going to be the crowning glory for the yellow jersey who's sitting at the back end of the main field.
And I don't blame him. Everybody wants the wheel of the fastest man in the world, Mark Cavendish, and they'll start bumping shoulders to get it.
Well, there's a little bit of confusion. There's the train of Team Garmin, Phil, over in the middle of the road, and now they are trying to take control of the front end of this main field to get their sprinter, Tyler Farrar, up in front of Mark Cavendish. Cavendish's lead-out train has now become slightly confused with a big move here coming from Christian Vande Velde.
Well, that's the way to ride it. It is no good allowing HTC and Mark Cavendish to lead to the line. You've got to get in amongst it and break it up and do it for yourself. And for once, Garmin has got it right.
Well, I can see that David Miller was shouting at Christian Vande Velde to give it his all, to keep going as long as he could. Vande Velde is a track rider in his passing, knows how to ride very quickly over a couple of kilometres. So too does David Miller. And right in the line of that man is, in fact, a little bit further back was Julian Dean and then Tyler Farrar. This is the only way that they can go, I think, if they want to try and beat Mark Cavendish. Cavendish still had with him, though, George Hincapie and Mark Renshaw.
Tyler Farrar is without doubt one of the fastest sprinters in the world as well. He has beaten Mark Cavendish this year. He's on this team here, and it is their job now to reposition Tyler Farrar. There's a little bit of panic amongst HTC at the moment because Cavendish is having to take the full broadside of the other riders around him.
They've got the organisation. Van der Velde did a massive turn there of about 1.5 kilometres. There's Farrar on the wheel of Julian Dean. Dean is his lead-out man. Now it's up to David Miller on the front, and he knows how to turn this, but he's got to keep it going for at least 1.5 kilometres at this kind of speed to stop his sprinter from getting swamped.
They need David Miller and his famous long turns now because they've got to the front maybe just a shade too early with only 3 riders. And because the other one is fading fast now, 2 riders to take Tyler Farrar to the line. They might run out of steam here, but Miller's gone into the tunnel. He's going to come out in the daylight at the sharp end of the Tour de France.
But there were still 3 riders from Columbia HTC locked in a line. Hincapie, Renshaw and Mark Cavendish. Who's going to come out of the tunnel in first place? It's still Garmin Slipstream in the front row, but in the second row, it's the riders from Columbia HTC. And right at the back of that line, again, the man in the green jersey, Torhushoff.
Well, for once, they are giving Mark Cavendish a run for his money. They've got the tactics right, there's no doubt. Robin McEwen, who sadly isn't in the race this year, said, guys, if you don't break up the teamwork of Columbia, you'll never win. Here comes the counter-attack, 1 kilometre to go, and Hincapie has swung the line across to the other side. They've realised it. Julian Dean has taken Farrar in there, and alongside him is the green jersey.
Second position is Mark Renshaw. Third position, Cavendish. Renshaw looking over his shoulder to see where Cavendish is. Hincapie has the power to take them right into the final bend, and that's what he's going to do. He wants to make sure that Cavendish doesn't get swamped, but there's another move. There's a challenge coming back there from Garmin Slipstream over on the inside.
Well, as they turn now to line up for the finish, look at the speed of the riders over the road. It was a very tight corner, that. As they line up, they can see the finish now. This is Mark Renshaw, the fastest lead-out man in the business, and there's the missile. He's locked onto his wheel now. This is going to be a formality. Win number 6 for Mark Cavendish. There's nobody can match the speed of this amazing kid. He has gotten the victory, and no British cyclist has ever been remotely close to winning 6 stages of the Tour de France. An incredible result.
I'll tell you what, Phil, I don't think we need a photo for that one because there was nobody else in the photo. That was almost a last-minute solo attack.
And as he wins, of course, in the field is Alberto Contador in yellow. He's safe. And the result will be as it was this morning. Contador will win, Lance Armstrong will finish in second, and Bradley Wiggins will finish the Tour de France in 4th place. But no doubt about the winner, it's Mark Cavendish.
Just say thank you very much as well, though, to Mark Renshaw. Renshaw had no fear at all going round that corner as he accelerates and opened up the gap on everybody else in the main field there and allowed his man to go to the finish, and he never even looked back, this kid from the Isle of Man. What an incredible victory, and I've got a feeling that Mark Renshaw, Phil, held on to get himself 2nd place.
But they just get easier and easier. I am not surprised that Mark Cavendish salutes the man there putting his arms in the air, because that is Mark Renshaw, the best lead-out man in the business. He could win stages for himself, of course he could. That's the one he wanted, but let's not forget who's won the Tour de France here, and that is Alberto Contador, ahead of Andy Schleck and Lance Armstrong and Bradley Wiggins. What a great finish.
To the stage and to the race overall, Mark Cavendish winning by a good chunk of the Champs-Élysées from his own teammate Mark Renshaw, with Tyler Farrar a speck in the distance in 3rd. Gerald Scholek was 4th on the stage, Yevgeny Kuturovic 5th, Torhushoff was 6th, Jose Joaquin Rojas 7th, and Marco Bandiera 8th. The second man with his arms in the air as he crossed the line today was Alberto Contador. He finished safely in the field on the same time as the winner, as did all the other big names, although how anyone else can be given the same time as the winner today is a bit of a mystery. Bradley Wiggins was in there in 55th place and headed straight for his wife Kath at the finish.
Bradley, that was an emotional reunion, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was just it's finally over, you know. I never thought when we were in Monaco you'd ever see the end of the tour. You always start a Tour de France like that, you never think the 3 weeks can come, you know, but eventually it does, you know. It ends one day and fortunately for me, it's been so successful.
3 astonishing weeks, really remarkable weeks that have seen you change completely as a bike rider.
Yeah. I remember I was here 3 years ago talking to you on the Champs-Élysées, having pretty much struggled through the whole tour. And never really envisaging coming back, let alone doing something in the Tour. So to be here 3 years later as 4th place and equaling, the great Robert Miller and surpassing the even greater Tom Simpson.
6 wins is pretty special too. The big riders who've won more in the Tour de France, but nobody's won 6 sprints, and this was the one Mark Cavendish has been saying all along he really wanted.
What does the view from up there, the winner's podium on the Champs-Élysées, look like?
Oh, it's unbelievable. I watched it on television as a kid. I sat in the stands for the last 2 years running and watched everyone finish, and I wanted to do it this year, to stand on the podium, to see it like that. It's one of the best feelings in the world, I'll tell you.
Now, but for his disqualification on stage 14, Mark might have been back on the podium for the green jersey presentation, although the relentless toughness shown by Thor Hushovd in hunting for points every day and on all terrains made him a worthy points champion. As well as finishing 2nd overall, Andy Schleck was the Tour's best young rider for the 2nd year, with a pair of Liquigas teammates Vincenzo Nibali and Roman Kreuziger 2nd and 3rd. Their team leader, meanwhile, Franco Pellizotti, won the mountains competition comfortably from Egor Martinez. And this is how the race overall looks after 3 weeks and nearly 3,500 kilometres of racing. Alberto Contador is the winner by 4 minutes 11 seconds from Andy Schleck. Lance Armstrong finishes 3rd, 5:24 down on Contador, and 37 seconds ahead of Bradley Wiggins. He's 4th, matching Robert Miller's best ever placing by a British rider. Frank Schleck finishes 5th, Andreas Klöden 6th, Vincenzo Nibali 7th, and Christian van der Velde 8th. Christophe Lemavelle was the top-placed Frenchman in 10th. Last year's winner, Carlos Sastre, 17th. Nicolas Roche had a great debut tour. He's 23rd. Charlie Vergelius is 59th. David Miller, 85th. Mark Cavendish, 131st. 156th. And last is Yevgeny Guterovich. Well, his children were dressed in yellow, outfits bought a little far in advance perhaps, but Lance Armstrong was realistic about his tour return and the reasons why ultimately he wasn't dressed to match.
I never felt like the team was an issue. I mean, when I needed support, I had support. The race was decided in moments that were really individual moments. I mean, there was never a time where I lost a minute or two because of my team, and I lost time when it was man-to-man and I wasn't as strong as I needed to be, so that's the way we want sport to be. I did my best. I'll come back next year and see if these old legs can go a little faster, and see.
Well, next year his old legs will be on his own team and he'll be racing Alberto Contador head-on. There's the final podium, Contador, Schleck, Armstrong, and no doubt in the end which of them was the strongest.
Yo ahora mismo estoy contentísimo, no he conseguido el segundo tour, ha sido un tour especialmente difícil para mí, pero bueno, por eso también lo saboreo y es más especial. Únicamente daros las gracias a todos y vamos a disfrutarlo. Gracias.
That's it for the 2009 Tour. Next year, July the 3rd, 2010 in Rotterdam. See you then.
Looks like Contador. Listen to the crowd here, cheering the Tour de France. Oof, dear me. That is bike handling. Oh, that's nasty. Miller's legs are going to burn like a bonfire. The elastic. Don't look round, go the race right now. Going again, bang, bang, bang. He's relying on the psychological factor. He looks as if he's got his feet up with his pipe and his slippers. The whole population's turned out.
That's what's going on.
Boom, boom, and out go the lights. Bridge to engine room, more power.
Was it the right time?
It was spot on.
Well, you wouldn't expect it to be anything else here. We have had a great Tour de France this year.